Greetings, flesh creatures. It is I, Megatron. On behalf of TFYLP, I want to congratulate you for listening to the most refined collected podcast on this miserable little planet Earth. Yes. Here you'll find knowledgeable fans discussing every aspect of Transformers and beyond. Now, enjoy the show while I continue my path to complete conquest of all of you miserable biological entities. Predacons, terrorize!
Hi, welcome to TFYLP, episode 591. We are live tonight. It is Thursday, August 8th. I'm Lucas. I am joined tonight by Christian.
What up?
And Phil.
What? Oh, I'm hi. Are we live?
And then we're live. So
I'm definitely not still finishing the article you asked me to read earlier.
Sure.
I totally read it. I'm just
Perfect.
like skimming it over again to make sure I remember all the God dang, this thing is long. Sweet Jesus.
Yeah.
It's really detailed.
Yeah, no, it really is. So there we go.
Beyblade. Okay. That's something. Cool.
Mentioned
Yeah.
at the
So what's
top of
going
the
on with you
episode
guys?
here, book club this week is at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central on the TF Talk Discord. They're going to be discussing War's Ends in Transformers 43 and the fate of Cybertron.
Let's do it.
And then also Zeldron says they're discussing Once a Man Cobra Commander. That's what we're discussing tonight.
What is that?
I don't know. I think we're discussing the fact that G.I. Joe is so successful that they wanted to integrate it more into Transformers and bring back the guy who is running the G.I. Joe division for Transformers so they could do more crossovers. Is that right?
I mean,
I hope that's
kind
not the end result.
of the article that I did read that part.
I read the entire interview and it said nothing about that. So
It
cool.
alluded to that at the beginning of the article.
Mm-hmm. It did. It did, Christian.
I didn't read that.
Yeah.
That is not how I interpreted it.
So, Christian, just out of curiosity, if they decided to switch the Generations line to being a full G.I. Joe crossover, would you just be like, I'm done, I'm out?
Yeah, I'd be out until they did something that wasn't that. Yeah, absolutely.
So what if it was like, all right, we're going to do like new Transformers characters and new Transformers vehicles, but each wave will have a crossover, vehicle, G.I. Joe Transformer.
No, I just wouldn't get that one then.
Okay. So you wouldn't be out. You just would be trimming back.
Well, Lucas's scenario was all of the Transformers are now G.I. Joe.
Okay.
And in that case, I would be out. But your scenario is one per wave, so I just can skip that figure. However,
But what if the
Transformer
theme?
figures there
What
are,
if
I'm skipping them?
So what if we get like a brand new Pinscher? It's very G1-esque Pinscher, but it's branded Transformers G.I. Joe.
Is it a G.I. Joe vehicle?
No, it's Pinscher. It's a
just
brand new
branded G.I.
version
Joe
of
for
G1
no reason?
Pinscher. What's that?
It's just branded G.I. Joe for no reason.
Because that's like the theme they go with. That'll be like the next version of Legacy is G.I. Joe meets Transformers.
And it comes with a G.I. Joe figure pack-in.
That would probably make me not get it.
Of Pinscher in his robot mode. I'm sorry, of Pinscher in his Pretender shell.
So what's the Transformer part?
The Transformer part is the Pinscher robot into the Scorpion.
So what's the Joe part?
Pinscher's Pretender shell is a Joe figure.
Oh, that's actually interesting. Maybe then.
So somewhat like we
like...
got that San Diego Comic-Con set years back that had a G.I. Joe figure of Bludgeon's Pretender shell.
That one, it was from that robot Joe. It's like a bat or something, right? That's what it was repainted from?
No, it was actually, I think it had a brand new head sculpt. It was a samurai G.I. Joe figure that they gave a robotic looking Terminator white skull head.
I was not interested in that one, I can tell you that much.
But what about just the general concept? Maybe execution wasn't spot on because they were reusing
maybe
parts.
When the Collectors Club was still around, I ended up with Old Snake and Marissa, and they were okay for a while. And then I was like, why do I have G.I. Joe figures, and got rid of them? But the only human sets were kind of interesting. Only one existed. I probably would have gotten a set of 4, but they did just 2 of them and then died, so they couldn't do that too. I think in instances like that, it might make sense. The only issue I have there is scalability, because a 3 3/4 Joe does not scale with a deluxe Transformer ever.
No, the Marissa Fairborn one was like especially annoying because I really like Afterburner. He's one of my favorite like Transformer alt modes.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we got a non-transforming Afterburner that didn't even, it was a motorcycle, a futuristic motorcycle.
It was the movie, G.I. Joe movie cycle thing, right?
Yeah. It was a G.I. Joe toy that they just painted orange instead of Afterburner.
So I don't like that, but the Marissa was pretty accurate. I was impressed by her just existence. Old Snake too. But no, I'm not generally interested in that. What you described with Pincher sounds kind of maybe I would be interested.
What if,
an interesting
Christian,
way to do
there was a third-party company that made hyper-posable, very detailed Pretender shell action figures? Would you buy that or like back that as a Kickstarter?
I backed it once, did not back it the second time.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, we are totally spitballing and talking out of our rear ends here for those of you who are watching and listening.
You're just trying to make me buy a G.I. Joe.
A little bit. I will say, I didn't buy any of, outside of the bludgeon we talked about, I did not buy any of the G.I. Joe figures that were painted to be Transformers human characters. I did like the Cobra Bat deco on that Transformers Prime Soundwave, though. I thought that was pretty neat looking. If they had done just Old Snake and one of those Soundwave bats versus having to buy 2, I probably would have been in for that set. That just was a little pricey for me at the time in terms of getting the 2 of them. I really, really am disappointed in it. For years said I should go and track down that Transformers Collectors Club subscription service Serpentor that they did, which was the repaint of Rat Bat, the Takara Rat Bat, which was the Generation Scourge.
I did have that, and I sold it immediately. I was just like, I'm not interested in this at all.
And now it's worth $300 or something. Maybe it's not that high, but it's elevated in value considerably.
Sold it to a friend who really wanted it, so I was like, get it out.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely dig that sort of thing when they do those kinds of crossovers. But I mean, I think it would be really hard to cross over the brands completely. To have touches of things here and there makes sense.
I really do think it would be a mistake to cross them over completely. I mean, that's not just my Joe hatred talking. It's me seeing that all of their movies failed. The merchandise lines got heavily discounted, clearanced, or thrown away. Everything I've seen while I've been alive of G.I. Joe has been a failure. It drags down anything they do. I don't want that touching Transformers.
Classified, I would say,
except Classified
in your lifetime has been the big success. Well. I mean,
every time there's a HasLab for it, it funds in a day or two. There's G.I. Joe dudes out there. I'm glad, do it. It's not for me. Please do it. Please don't mix it with Transformers, though. That I just don't want to see that happen. All those figures they've done, the Megatron in particular is very awful looking. I think Cup looks terrible. B looks bad.
So
Stop.
when there
Just
is
stop
a
it.
reference to Energon on the bio for a G.I. Joe toy, that matters nothing to you.
No. Yeah.
Why are you a filthy casual?
I just told you.
Okay.
G.I. Joe has never been successful in my lifetime besides Classified.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a way they could cross it over and be somewhat successful. And I could see in the world too. I was thinking about this, like, and about the interview where, like, there were some rumors that Hasbro was going to buy Mattel, and, like, I have no idea if that'll ever happen, right? But I was kind of thinking about the fact that, like, you know how much interest, like, I know Star Wars as a brand is kind of like, I don't know, not been quite as popular recently. Like, they almost kind of, like, overdid it with the last movies and all that. And so, like, the Star Wars toys have just really not been successful at all, right? Like, there was a big, huge wave, however many years ago, 10 years ago or whatever it was. But it's, like, really not captured people's imaginations, right? Obviously there's Marvel, but I was kind of wondering, is, like, I'm curious, like, if, with bringing Warden back to Transformers, is really that Hasbro's like, hey, we have this successful IP, why don't we promote that, because we don't have to pay licensing fees for that. I mean, obviously also Power Rangers, like, I guess they own that now, but then I guess that was not successful as an IP, or at least, currently. And so, like, I was really kind of curious, like, whenever, like, I have no idea what the contract length of, like, Star Wars and things like that but I'd be curious, like, how much interest, like, Hasbro even has in Star Wars. Is that something that they really are, feel like is a core part of their brand, or, do they really want to focus more on their own IP?
I definitely get the sense that Star Wars and Marvel together, and I'll bundle them together because they're both Disney owned. They're so much more tied to the fiction that's coming out on our screens, whether it's the movies or the TV. And when that fiction is popular, that stuff gets hot. And when the fiction is struggling, which the Star Wars and Marvel brands are to an extent, that license gets maybe not as profitable for them. And when I say things like maybe not as profitable, I'm speaking hypotheticals. I don't have any looks at any balance sheets or anything like that.
Right.
But just like I'm even kind of like thinking about this through the viewpoint of, like, going to a Target or Walmart and how much of the toy aisle, of the action figure aisle, real estate is taken up by these different brands. So,
Right.
like, while Marvel and Star Wars still have a decent amount of real estate, it's not as big as when, like, Endgame was coming out or some of those other things. And, like, right now, to me, outside of Lego and outside of Hot Wheels, because those are two, like, very, like, different sort of animals. Like, so yeah, let's just say action figures. For the action figure space, it's like Jurassic Park, Transformers, and Ninja Turtles seem to be getting the most amount of real estate in the toy aisles these days, at least from the Walmarts and Targets I frequent. And so, to me, that's saying that, but again, Transformers and Marvel can easily get hot again and start having a ton more real estate. I mean, right now, kind of the talk of the movies is Wolverine, Deadpool, and unfortunately, they don't have a lot of toys for that, and it's not a kid-friendly property,
Right.
so they can't necessarily put out a ton of stuff for that sort of thing and get the kids in the toy aisle to buy that. Even though my son does, like, every time we go to Target, wants the Deadpool katanas, which are just cheap plastic katanas but they're branded Deadpool katanas, so he wants to spend the $30 on them. I'm like, no, stop it, put them back.
Right. Zoldron says your stores are stocked.
I mean, it's hit or miss, but even for like, and I'd say with the Transformers 1 stuff coming in, it's been more hit lately. But even for like, even if they're not well stocked, the area that is dedicated to Transformers is significantly larger than a lot of the other properties. Definitely larger than Star Wars and Marvel.
Right. Right.
I mean,
That's
Batman and
what it is.
McFarlane have a pretty decent size spot as well, so they're still doing well. It seems like.
I went to Target last night to try and find some Transformers 1 stuff because I just wanted to see it, just look at it. And I heard that they're putting out those 3-sided end caps full of that stuff. So I went and they did have the 3-sided end cap and it was just empty. Had no Transformers on it at all. Had the signage. I was like, oh, that's neat, but there's nothing here. Thanks for nothing. But I did check Star Wars. There had a full couple pegs of Black Series, but it was one line of pegs. And then Marvel Legends, I think, had 2.
Yeah.
Part of it was their exclusive. Part of it was other stuff.
I was just in Minneapolis this past weekend, and Target headquarters up there. So the one Target I did stop at, like their Transformers section was so full. Like the Brawn and Ratchet 2-packs, had a bunch of them. The 4-packs was stacked to the gills. First time I'd ever seen Party Wallop in stores, and they had a boatload of him. Ton of the Transformers 1 stuff. So now this was a very large Target near Target's headquarters. So, probably getting better stock than most Targets would be.
Right.
But they had a just truckload of pretty much all the new toys, like even some of the new Masters of the Universe and Ninja Turtle stuff. They were very well stocked in. But this is the time of year where, toy aisles are getting restocked because they want to get those families coming in for doing the back to school shopping for the kid to drag them out over the toy aisle and like to hey, buy me a new action figure, a new toy while we're here buying pencils and backpacks.
Right. Well, just out of curiosity, did you send pictures of the toy aisles to Paul and be like, I could scout this so hard?
I did not. I'm trying to minimize how much I do with that, just because. No.
I'm not saying actually do that. I'm saying just send it to Paul.
No, I did not do that. Because honestly, I will say, Paul has found a lot of this stuff, and again, there are Targets near me that are pretty well stocked with it, so it is a little bit of a crapshoot. I think we've talked about before, Illinois being an area that tends to get stocked sooner than others. We have a lot of big rail and trucking ports in Illinois, so we do get stocked more frequently, earlier than other parts of the country do.
I just feel like in KC, at least at the Walmart, it's had the same stock of Transformers for I have no idea how long. They just sit on the pegs, never moving. Yeah,
but it's still a lot of space dedicated to the Rise of the Beast toys that no one bought, or the Armada, not Armada, the Armada Megatrons are still sitting there. The Blitzwings are still sitting there. The Studio Series Ratchets with their heads ripped off are still sitting there. So but again, the Transformers, even at the Walmart, even though it's old stock, it's still a big chunk of real estate for the action figure aisle.
Yeah, I would agree. So tonight, our topic, we're supposed to be talking about the fact that John Warden is back on the brand. So the prodigal son has returned or something. I don't know. He's been gone for a few years. Him and Lenny decided to go over to Joe, and I think they did Ghostbusters for a bit too, right? and
Yes.
but now apparently he's back. So he did a pretty lengthy interview on TFW 2005. I think when they were at San Diego Comic Con, and I think that was at Comic Con, right?
It was.
And
Yeah, and by
so
pretty
anyway,
lengthy, this is like War and Peace level amount of reading you have to do.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's two interviews that they put together in one article.
Yeah, and I just like I'm not confident in how much Warren is going to help the brand. Warden is going to help the brand because apparently he has enough time to sit and talk to these dudes for like 3 hours. So yeah. What?
We like old John Hasbro.
Yeah, I mean that's just why are you crapping on my hot take there, Christian?
So he's not like back. Mark is still in charge of Transformers. In fact, he got a promotion about 2 months ago to be senior product designer for Transformers, which is great. Good job, Mark. He's not leaving. Warden is taking a newly created position where he's sort of like a general manager over Transformers and G.I. Joe. So Mark will now report to him. I think Lenny will report to him too if he's still in charge of G.I. Joe. I'm not as familiar with that team because I don't like G.I. Joe. But everything should be remaining the same, but having someone who knows Transformers in charge of it should be a good thing for us.
Christian, with the Olympics going on,
Mhm.
like what are you getting like shunned by your family and friends for cheering against America? So I feel like if you don't like G.I. Joe, you hate America.
That is correct. No, I'm not getting shunned by my family and friends because I don't know anybody who's actually watching it.
Oh.
Here's my hot take. I much prefer the Winter Olympics.
Oh, that is a hot take on a cold sport.
Several cold sports.
Anywho,
Warden is back, but it's in a new capacity. He's not going. I mean, it's like he like has overall direction responsibilities for the brand. Like he specifically mentions that he's looking more towards collectors than they used to when he was doing like Combiner Wars and Titans Return, and that's cool for us. It's a bit concerning for the brand overall, but if that's how they're going to survive, I guess that's how they're going to survive. We'll talk about that probably later or another time. But for now, we're going to say it's a good thing. And again, Mark got a promotion, which means he's making more money to continue doing what he's been doing for us for many years. And that's great.
Well,
we love Mark.
I thought it was interesting, though, with Mark was that, one, he ended up not going to Comic-Con. And then the other thing is, you know, I think before he gotten his promotion, he kind of made some like cryptic, you know, posts on Instagram about the direction of the brand, which he took down immediately after posting them, which is, you know, probably not a great.
That was a bit strange, and it came out at the same time as the news that Warden was going to be back at Transformers. It was the same day, I think, or within 24 hours. And so it was a little bit frightening. It's like, oh, is Mark gone? They're bringing John back in? No, it wasn't that. But for that little bit of time, it was pretty concerning. They did address it in the interview. And it seems like Mark is safe, and he'll be on Transformers for a long time.
Yeah.
As long as he wants to be.
Well, I think that's great if that's the case, because I think between him and Evan, and I don't know, is BMAX still, like, I wasn't sure because they had another guy. Is he?
I think he might have moved.
Okay.
He was on some of the more recent G.I. Joe live streams, so he might have switched over there. Yeah, the guy they had at San Diego for Hasbro doing a lot of live streams, just very thick Boston accent, which I get it.
I think.
Yeah, that's where Hasbro's headquartered. Not Boston, but New England accent. And he just seemed like always kind of in a rush. Like, yeah, we got this thing coming out. All right, cool. Move on to the next thing. Yeah, we got
very
this thing
frenetic.
What's that?
He seemed very frenetic.
Yeah, he was always kind of looking to move on to the next thing. And hey, let's keep this thing rolling. We got a tight schedule here. Like he, at least from my perspective, didn't exude a I don't know if passion's the right word for the brand, but didn't certainly seem to have the enthusiasm that you'd like to see from one of these folks. And I get it, they're marketing guys and gals. They're not always going to be in love with the brand, especially like we are, like the designers are. And some of them fall in love with the brand, or some of them just, act better. This guy didn't seem to be acting like he gave a hoot. It's like, oh yeah, that's neat. Next thing. That was
Yeah,
not
and
about.
Yeah,
and
they
I mean, who knows? It's hard to tell. Like, if he hasn't done as many Transformers live streams, maybe it's one of those things where he kind of has to get in a rhythm with, Mark and Evan and John and those guys, right? Where that, BMAC and had done 1,000 of these interviews with those guys, so he was kind of used to working with them and whatnot. So
Yeah, and San Diego, as we talked about the other week, is such just an enormous, gargantuan behemoth of an event that I'm sure anyone working in the marketing for a company like Hasbro is going to be just, having themselves pulled in 17 different directions at one time. So yeah, I don't want to besmirch the guy. I did besmirch the guy. I doesn't necessarily want to besmirch the guy, but I'll probably even do it again. But I don't want to. I'll just do it.
yeah.
okay.
So also,
I'm
Phil, you've been frozen too. Just FYI.
Gracias.
I'm just skimming the interview again and seeing what Evan and Nate had to say first before we got to the John parts. Some bigger news. Well, one, there's no news on Reactivate. The Hasbro guys at the show did not have any news on Reactivate, but it's not good.
No, I mean,
That's
I don't think
bad news.
I don't think that game is coming out anytime soon. Like, if they're completely dumping it and redoing it, like, it's if it comes out, it's going to be more of a like 2025 or 2026 kind of thing, not a now.
Yeah.
So what other you're
I
out
thought
there?
you were frozen too for a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm not frozen. I'm here. Now Phil's
Let's
still
see. We're
frozen,
going through. There's no current plans for any new shows for legacy stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't understand
Nate
why. Like,
says
the other shows were so successful.
we're so good.
Yes, critically acclaimed.
They were asked about core class going away. Evan was kind of cagey about it. We'll see a couple more core class trickle out in spots where they can find them. And then Nate says core class definitively is not going away. But then he talks about Dino King, which is cool. I'm excited for Dino King. Yay, Dino King. And he is core class. And that, I guess, sort of makes sense. And then talking about how many cons go in core class. Again, we've seen no solicitations for any cores in 2025. So
Right.
I think maybe they're just talking about the same things in different ways. It's like, yeah, it'll still exist, but also it's not going to exist as a retail segment.
Well, like, obviously some smaller Transformers are going to be included with various packs, right? Like, say for example, Soundwave is going to come with a couple tapes, right?
Yep.
But like, I think as a price point, like, we know it's going away, right? So I think that's pretty much just like they're gonna try and stick some of those size classes in as like to me, I feel like the way they're probably gonna do it going forward is they're gonna start pushing more Voyagers and throwing core class in with them as leaders, as pack-ins or for the leader price point. You know what I mean?
And that could work. I'd be all right with that. The next piece they say is that they're not running out of Titans. Don't be concerned.
Well, I also kind of feel like, and again, I know Devastator, like, they're redoing Devastator as individual figures, right? But I mean, I think they also addressed Metroplex, or I don't know if that was in the Warden part of the interview.
It's further down, but we can talk about it.
They were asking about Metroplex and whether or not that's going to get re-released because, hey, it's pretty expensive on the aftermarket.
And they just did Fort Max. Go get it at Big Bad now.
Right. And they were, I feel like they're almost more discussing like, hey, this was a certain design, and we all like almost sounded like they wanted to redo the figure, but then I don't know if Metroplex. To me, I almost feel like Metroplex is going to be like a HasLab, not a Titan, is because I think they mentioned that in the article too about the fact that like it's going to be expensive.
Yep, that's the impression that I got, that they could probably release Titan Metroplex, the first Titan, but it would be more expensive, just like Max was, because that costs more than it did 11 years ago. But because it is sort of attached to that IDW era and sort of attached to that Fall of Cybertron era, that they're looking at doing something maybe more faithful to G1, which would then have to be big. Ward wants it big.
So there was other news that came out of San Diego that, and I apologize if this is in the article that we didn't talk about.
Are you talking about Dragon Man?
I'm talking about Dragon Man.
Good. I wanted to talk about that with you.
Yeah, I'm talking about Dragon Man. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, this is a thing that Christian and I like, but Lucas hates. So we're going to ostracize him now. No, I don't know if he cares about this.
What?
No, you used to like Marvel Legends. So on the Marvel Legends side of Hasbro, they've got a new Dragon Man toy coming out. And they said, the Marvel Legends team for Hasbro said, this is not going to be a HasLab. It's going to be a big toy. It's not going to be as big as the other HasLabs they've done, like Galactus or Sentinel that I'm looking at right now, which are significantly larger than the Transformers Titans. But it is going to be a sort of Kickstarter-esque type of funding. They're not going to have a production run number that they have to hit like HasLabs do, but it's going to be more like the Super 7 figures, where it's going to be made to order, where you're going to have a window of a month or two to order this thing. If they get 16,000 orders, they're making 16,000 of that toy, and then they're cutting it off. So I could see a new Metroplex, especially if it's going to be larger than the earlier one, come out in that sort of new format that is kind of eliminating the chance of having a HasLab not fund. Because I got a feeling like when they saw some of these HasLabs that didn't fund, where there was the Ghost Rider car or some of the Star Wars ones that didn't fund, there's still a lot of money that goes into developing those things. And to have a chance of it not succeeding, I mean, maybe they save money at the long run because they didn't they didn't get enough orders to make it profitable, but it still seems like, man, we wasted a lot of our team's time and talent on designing this for nothing to come of it.
Yes. So,
and also no stretch goals was another part of it.
No stretch goals. You're right. It's just you order the thing and you get the thing, and there's no more things after that.
Right.
They didn't say it would be like a one run and done. I mean, I guess in theory they would do a reissue on that more than they would reissue a HasLab.
Yeah.
Who knows? So I could see that being used for us for like weird redecos. And the one I keep going back to is like G2 Motormaster. It was rumored to be going to Walmart a couple years ago with the Velocitron stuff, and they didn't want to carry an $80 figure for that to happen, right? They didn't want to be stuck with that. So now Motormaster has no home. But if you just MTO him on Pulse, go get your Motormasters. That's a way to get it. They'll make that many and they'll be done. You don't have to deal with retailers being weird about it. I think that's an interesting segment for us. I hope they bring it over.
And if you're talking about being more collector focused, like Warden's supposedly being, I think that is a methodology that some of the more collector focused toy companies have been doing.
Yep.
Right. Well, the funny thing is the Titan class price point is actually more expensive now than a couple of the HasLabs, right? So
That's right.
I mean that's the other thing anyway, but I don't know. I mean, I could see them redoing some of these HasLabs too, uh, or I'm sorry, Titan class figures too. That it's been long enough on some of them. I like almost kind of forgot like how long ago Combiner Wars was, and like when they're bringing it up in the article, the fact that it was like the 10th anniversary
About 10 years
coming,
old. Yep.
and I was just like, oh my god, am I like, is it that old really? Um, yeah.
Yep. Pretty weird, isn't it?
Time is a flat circle.
Maybe. The next piece, I'm just going to touch on a couple of these if they're not like super important, but Devastator is going to combine like Devastator. The question was whether it would have a frame similar to how Minosaur did, or I guess Motormaster had the frame and made Minosaur. No frame. They said expect the expected. How does Devastator combine? He combines like that.
Right,
All
which
six
I mean, I
Berserkicons.
think the Minosaur is probably somewhat unique to him, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, do you think that they would use a similar setup for other combiners as well, or do you think that
Maybe, the other scramblers, you could maybe do it. We'll
Yeah.
see next year because there's aerial bots and Combaticons on the menu.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Scramble City style combiners, doing it Minosaur style makes a lot of sense.
right?
And that's what a lot of the third party companies have been doing for the last several years. It's just those toys are just too like you're gonna make the central toy just so big or unwieldy, or like Minosaur actually
You
makes a
have to
lot of
compromise
sense.
too many things.
Yeah, Minosaur is probably one of the easiest ones to do that because of his trailer. That you can make the trailer, be a lot of that stuff. But a toy like Superion with Silverbolt, that's you don't have the luxury of that. I mean, I can see you doing it with Onslaught and Hotspot. Are a little bit easy to do that because they are trucks that you can like detach the back of the truck, similar to Motormaster.
Mhm.
But definitely Superion, doing it like the Zeta style, where you have just this chunk of plastic that makes the upper thighs and ab region of the toy. I mean,
So Christian,
I don't mind if it's a parts former kind of thing.
if the combiner parts for Superion combined to an aircraft carrier that they named the USS Flag, would you get the new Superion, or would you stick with the Combiner Wars?
Guess I'd get it. I would hate that, but
As he customizes it, not like to add paint or add detail, but just to paint over the USSS flag.
I would
Guys,
do that, yeah.
What gray do you think matches this plastic the best? Which color gray?
I'd absolutely do that. Yeah, I would do that. That's not a question. I would do that. I would paint over that.
Fair enough.
Or remove the tampograph.
He's like just sitting as a Sharpie, just.
I'm better than Sharpie, Phil.
No, I'm saying that's like how. It's not that you're not that good of a customizer. It's that you care so little about it that you would put in such minimal effort.
They want to do Robots in Disguise Megatron to go with the Mega Prime. They're saying it's bigger than a Commander class. If they were gonna do, I don't think that's really true. I mean, he's a big dude, but like he's a small Titan. What does that mean?
Right. Well, they are shrinking everything down, so I could kind of see that, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, I could see him being larger than Magmatron, and he's a complex toy. And if you wanted to make some of those alt modes look better, making them bigger would help with that. Because let's face it, the original Gigatron or RID Megatron, some of those modes are like, it's a hand if I squint enough. Yeah.
There was one part I skipped over earlier. I didn't mean to. I think we were talking about another thing instead. But Mark and Evan both have running tallies of like subgroups they're doing. So Mark has been really big on getting the Trigger Cons finished, which just happened with a Windsweeper. And he's also been really big on getting the Deluxe Insecticons finished, which will have Venom next year. So I'm hoping they're just going to keep completing teams like that. I think maybe that's why we haven't seen Omnibots, because they want to plan all three before they start giving one. We can hope. But it's nice that they're thinking about that.
And I think it's one of those things that we've seen with so many of these toys that this can't just be a one and done mold usage. What else can they use it for? So you got to put the planning into that of not just, we're going to make this guy. It's going to be like, what 3 guys can we make out of this mold with some retooling or a new slap of paint?
I think they've gotten a lot better at that than they used to be, you know?
Absolutely. I think
the
Windsweeper
Quake
is a great example of that.
Is like, is that even Skullgrin there? Not really.
Are you talking about the Generation Skullgrin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Legacy Skullgrin.
You don't think that's Skullgrin, the Legacy one?
No. They've retooled that Skullgrin to make Quake that's coming out.
Oh,
so when you look at Quake,
yes.
Can you even see Skullgrin in that? I can't.
I apologize. I didn't hear everything you said. You're absolutely right. That's another great example.
So they're doing a lot better on that. I think.
I mean, you look at Vector Prime out of Jaxus, another great example.
Yeah, it reuses the legs, but I think it's okay. A lot of people don't think it's okay. I think it's okay.
If you know what to look for, you can tell it's Jaxus, but if you're just looking at them side by side, like if I had my kids look at them, they're 2 totally different guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
But I'm curious with the finishing the teams. Do you think that they would actually finish the Micromasters?
No.
Right.
No. I mean, honestly, for that size, that scale, we'll be lucky if they finish the Transformers and Minibots partnerships for a lot of those toys, for a lot of the Armada guys. I mean, and then you're just talking 2-person teams.
Yeah, the Minicon thing is going to be tough. They talk about that a little bit later. We had that Nate guy saying stuff about getting it in core class. I think core class is gone. I'm trying to see if I thought Warden talked about it a little bit more. I'm just kind of looking through here because we do need it, and we're getting another Armada character without a Minicon in 2 waves. With Armada Wheeljack.
Right.
Whereas Windshear, they've tooled that Minicon up. It came out with Shadowglass Sideswipe as Whisperer last year. Where is he gonna be? So we're missing. If we're going to include that, we're missing Windshear, Swindle with Starscream, Leader 1 with Megatron, Sparkplug with Optimus Prime. Galvatron's coming out without Clench. Metroplex came without Drill Bit. Vector Prime came without Safeguard. And Hotshot came without Jolt, but he got released another way, so we're missing the other Jolt. Yellow Jolt, probably.
I had to stop and think. I just got the Cybertron Hotshots. I'm like, wait, what? No, he didn't. He's not missing a guy.
Surprise! It was the Armada Hotshot.
Yeah.
And the Power Rangers came the wrong one. And then I think we're getting the other Armada Seekers. We just had that listing for Super Starscream, so we would need Zap Master. Ooh! I almost forgot that one. So, there's several Minicons that need to arrive. Maybe they just do a big old Minicon catch-up pack. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, they did kind of talk about that, and they were asking him also about doing accessory packs, which they sounded like that's something they'd like to do, but who knows whether or not it will actually happen.
Here's the Minicon part. Warden acknowledged Archer talking about the Minicons. That was pretty cool. I always like to see when they do that because Archer is my god. He's actually, I'm just kind of skimming through. I'm sorry I'm reading this, live. I read it several days ago, and it's not fresh in my memory anymore. But Warden also mentions that some of the tools for the minicons still exist, the original Armada ones. So perhaps we'd even see some reissues coming down for that. That'd be interesting.
Yep.
He definitely says he knows that they've released a bunch of Armada characters that don't come with their minicon companions, and he knows there are people out there that have been asking, so there's room for that for certain. So hopefully they will arrive. They're important, right? That's like the entire point of Armada.
Right.
The minicons, and you don't release the minicons with them. It's like, why are you doing it?
Right. Well, and they've released a fair amount of Armada too, right?
I just listed
it's
them
not
all.
just like a one-off here or there.
Yeah, no, this is, and they're adding to it, to Christian's point. And again, it's not just Armada. There are other of the Unicron trilogies that also had minicons. So I don't know. It is interesting to see what they're going to do. The fact that the core class seems to be headed for extinction makes that tricky, but I don't know. We'll see.
Warden seems to think that having flight stands is a good idea, or backgrounds, shelf customizing elements. Maybe we'll see some of that. That'd be kind of
backgrounds
cool.
do diddly for me, but I do enjoy flight stands.
I think they would be backgrounds on a flight stand. It could be a wall, a right angle with a flight stand in it. That's what it reads like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I don't see though is like, where do you release that at?
Pulse.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
that's where they have their flight stands now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That they just don't have transformer adapters, even though everyone has a flight stand port. The pulse stands don't have adapters for that, which is weird.
That's weird.
So TFW told John about Rails, the train worm snake guy from initial draft Transformers the movie. By the way, happy anniversary Transformers the movie today, 38 years old.
38 years old.
So they told him about Rails, and he was like, whoa, that sounds awesome. I love trains. Evan loves trains. Mark loves trains. So maybe we'll get some more trains. But they're mentioning that in the context of the Studio Series concept thing. Someone apparently brought up Transit from Rise of the Bests at the panel. It's like, yeah, that's on the table because it existed. And they're like, oh, now that Rails, we know that existed, that could be on the table too. And they want that to be like a Titan. I don't know if that's a good idea for such an obscure, barely kind of a character. But hey, I'd like it. I like trains. I like snakes.
Right.
So whatever.
I feel like they're more likely to redo Rail Racer than that. But, I mean, who knows?
There's been a lot of buzz around that as the next Titan. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
He got a question about are your priorities fleshing out teams of Transformers or just making cool figures of whatever characters you like the most? Seems like they want to do teams. You mentioned specifically the Carr brothers from Robots in the Skies, which is cool because we just got Cyber, the other two. Seekers, cassettes. And then he goes on to talk about broader things like Armada doing that whole cast, or Beast Wars Neo Prime, Lost Light. He mentions Lost Light a bunch of times, particularly doing a Nautica that he would like to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about that because I think they also mentioned the DJD as well in there. So I think that I'm all for doing more of that. I thought the other thing that was somewhat interesting is he had mentioned 14 years specifically, that's kind of like a lot of times where they're looking to do retro
nostalgia
stuff.
cycle. Yeah,
like that's the nostalgia cycle because whatever the kids that or people that are kids or whatever essentially kind of like grown up like in their 20s by the time you add 14 years to like whatever came out. So I guess from that respect, like when did IDW how long ago was that again? I can't remember.
When did IDW start?
Well, like Phase 2. When was Phase 2?
2011? 2010?
13, 12?
So
It
yeah,
might.
I mean,
No, I mean, yeah, we're I think close to the 14th anniversary of
Yeah.
like Death of
Hang
Optimus
on.
Prime.
Let me check that. I'll be right with you. We agree that's Death of Optimus Prime, though.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say that's the kickoff.
December of 2011.
So next year.
there you
Sure.
go. Which I could kind of see with 25, 26 or whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they already have Tarn out, so.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done
And
a
it
few
came out
of those
again.
things,
It's
too.
coming out again.
Right.
Yeah.
Retards.
Well, 2, but 1 with different packaging.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I think they're great. They did a Nautica in Titan's Return because she was being a very big character around that time.
yeah.
It's not a very good toy, but it's the one that exists.
No.
And Warden mentions that one specifically as not really hitting the mark. But I think it was cool that they tried to get something out that existed while the iron was hot for that. So, it's been a long enough time. I mean, that was, 8 years ago-ish? Yeah. So, they could do another one. Also, mentioned Drift. He hasn't had a toy in 14 years, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at something like the Deadeye Duel 2-pack with Cascade and Javelin, and I literally had the instructions in here, otherwise I would not have remembered their name.
Nice.
Those were figures that came out from the second IDW universe, the third IDW like sort of launch, however you want to frame it. Pretty darn contemporary to when the books came out, and much better at looking like their comic book counterparts than what we got with a lot of those early Lost Light toys. Although I will say the Generation Swerve did a good job of having a very, Lost Light Swerve face.
I'll throw Tailgate in there too.
Which Tailgate?
The little one. Same assortment.
Oh, okay, yeah. The little one, yeah, where they both came with like little mini con guys. Yeah. Yeah. That one, the face was good, but just like overall that body was a lot of kibble.
But I do think that they have now more experience in making those kinds of forms. And something else interesting that John said about Combiner Wars, and looking back on it now, was that was designed as a toy feature first thing, which is not what they're doing now. What they're doing now is, character first design. And I think it's just interesting to have someone acknowledge that. Again, is that a good thing? Archer's podcast had a couple interesting points about that recently. Definitely give that a listen. But for now, I think it's good.
What was the gist on that Archer said?
On Archer? Yeah, he thinks that you have to do toy design first because that's how you hook new people, new kids in particular. It's not enough that the toy sits there and can pose and do the thing.
Right.
It has to do something. And what they learned on Transformers is that just transforming wasn't enough for kids. It had to have another thing. So the other thing for Combiner Wars is that they combine and have interconnectability. That's a toy feature. Whereas there's no unifying toy feature in Legacy. It's just that they are the characters, which is good for us. Bad for
I don't know
kids.
what you're talking about. What about Evo Fusion?
Yeah, they started with a unifying sort of gimmick that they dropped fairly fast.
Right.
Which was?
Well, it was the Evo Fusion was the second kind of name for it. I forget what it was called in the first round of Legacy toys.
Oh, it's just that stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Where it was like the clear plastic weapons that you could kind of mix match and that sort of thing.
Didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. There was an interesting piece about
effects,
how they've been designed since Siege, where they've got more pins than screws, and they've got more robust joints. And that was really a side effect of designing them around handling the weaponizer figures or the armorizer type figures, because those pieces, those chunks are heavy. So everyone had to be designed to be able to actually heft them. And they're keeping that design philosophy going forward because it ends up being a lot better for durability and posability.
Meanwhile, customizers are all cursing.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's not a segment of the fan base that you need to go to.
No.
Yeah.
Please don't.
And I'm nothing wrong with your customizer. I mean, you are a freak of nature, like living in some dungeon, like with huffing fumes of whatever you're using to color the stuff. But it's just such a small segment of the fandom. Is more my
no reason to cater to us directly.
Yeah, you freaks. Yeah, it's anything else that Warden said that really jumped out at you, gentlemen?
No, I finished skimming through.
So I just sent you guys an article that I think ties in well to some of this as well, and it was an article more on the retail side of Hasbro, and I think it ties in well with Warden taking over this is from a more brand perspective, and it was really talking about how we got so many toys in 2023 that ended up at Ross's and TJ Maxx and all those discount retailers. And how much Hasbro is trying to combat that. And so I think doing things like the made to order large scale toys makes a lot of sense for that. You definitely, I mean, there were Titans that ended up at Ross, and we're not talking about like years after the fact or like whatever that they end up at Ollie's, but like pretty contemporaneously, we had arcs popping up at Ross and whatnot. But even things like the new Bumblebee and the new Transformers 1 Optimus Prime, that those will kind of always be available to order. I think these are all examples of them trying to be a little bit more nimble with some of the way they're getting things to consumers, and how they're using manufacturing and shipping and all that stuff, which is a reaction to kind of the craziness of COVID canceling everything, stopping everything, and then having things having to restart and things kind of coming out in these weird fits and spurts. And suddenly, retailers had way more than they could take to put on their shelves. So things ended up at, discount retailers. And so I think Hasbro is very much trying to combat that while at the same time, like go after who's buying toys. Because one of the interesting things the article points out is that the physical toy sales that Hasbro had in 2023 dropped significantly, but their profits went up mainly because of the digital sales of the digital Magic the Gathering stuff and their digital Wizards of the Coasts. And so it's from a guy like Warren's perspective, it's like, okay, who's still putting a physical piece of plastic in their hands? Let's make sure we, are selling things to those people. And I get where Aaron Archer is kind of coming in differently and saying like, hey, you can't just cater to those people, because then you're not going to cater to the next generation of folks. But I mean, the next generation of folks might not really come around to wanting to own physical toys. Lego is a different entity, and Lego seems to have really strong footing with this. And you'd think Transformers, with their ability to transform and kind of being that puzzle, and being the two things as one, would survive this stuff better. But I mean, you just sort of never know. So I mean, I think a guy like Warden is also partially to be there to be a shepherd and steward for the IP.
Yep, I would say that's even his main role, realistically.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's going after who's left, which is us.
Right.
And again, it's not like Transformers aren't bought by children anymore. It's not like Transformers don't get into the hands of kids. I mean, Transformers 1 is a testament to that. It's clearly aimed at catching that younger demographic than the other movies ever have.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think I hope it's very successful. I've heard some anecdotal reports that kids are excited about it, enjoying the trailers, going out and picking up some figures if they see them. That's good news for us because we'll need them. You guys will be, 60, I'll be 50, and we'll be trying to get our next round of legacy stuff. But if there's no kids getting in, there's no more money to do that.
Yeah, and who's going to buy this crap off of me?
Right.
They'll have to because they're not going to be. We got the same stuff.
It is interesting when you kind of talk about the idea of gimmicks with toys. My 4-year-old son likes mix and match toys. He really enjoys toys where you can like swap out parts and put in another guy's parts. And the newest wave of Ninja Turtle toys all do that. It's like Mutant Mayhem or something. It kind of ties into their new episodes cartoon that they got coming out on Paramount Plus. But you get a Leonardo figure, and it also comes with a Splinter head and a metal head arm and a Donatello leg. And that's all in one package. It's $10. And then you buy the Raphael, and the Raphael will come with a metalhead head and a Leonardo arm and a bad guy leg, a bad guy robot leg. And the thing is, like, you then can start switching and swapping all these different parts out. Like the heads, the arms, the legs all pop off these guys. Like easily they're designed to. And like he and his older brother just were like, we gotta get all these guys. Like I made him stop. I'm like, don't buy Splinter. You have 3 Splinter heads already and a bunch of Splinter arms. Like, we don't have the Splinter body because the only way you can get the central body is by buying the figure, and we don't have his bow and arrow. Like, this is like the weirdest looking Splinter toy I've seen. They give him these big glasses. They make him nerdy, and the movie he had an afro. It's just a weird Splinter. And so I'm like, no, you don't need Splinter. You've already got enough Splinter parts. But like, they were hunting down these figures, especially once they found like that there was the second wave, which had like the bad guys in them. Like, no, we're not just going to get all 4 turtles. We need to get these bad guy robots as well. And it was like my older son bought the bad guy robots and one of the turtles, and my younger son was just like, well, I need to buy them for myself too, because my older brother's now always going to share them with me, and I want them. So like, so I apologize for going on this tangent to tie it in, but it's like the idea of like, this was a play pattern that they really, really gravitated to. And so to Archer's point about it is oftentimes a play pattern that brings in the action feature that brings in, this younger audience. I mean, my 4-year-old son, man, he went in hook, line, and sinker for that. And so like really cool. Took this little mini vacation, like I said, and like their backpacks just full of Ninja Turtle arms and legs and bodies, and they just like dumped them out on the hotel bed and are playing around with them, swapping, like arguing over who gets which pieces, and yeah, that was something that they really, really got into. So there's still the younger kid that wants the physical toys, but I think the kids age out of it a little bit, quicker than they did because of video games, and who's to say how long this will last? I mean, we're all going to be plugged in the metaverse at some point and playing with, virtual toys, in the meta space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, one thing that Hasbro could have done better is connecting some of the digital stuff to physical goods. I don't know. I mean, I guess that was kind of like a fad in general with Skylanders and all that just kind of died. But I'm surprised that nobody's kind of tried to go back at that a little bit. So
let's face it, even Lego couldn't quite get that to work. And if Lego has a hard time with it, most retailers are. It's just it was like a bit of a phase to your point, Lucas, and one that just didn't really last. I mean, it is interesting, like the physical stuff, not just my son, but his peer group buys is Pokemon cards. So that is a physical thing that these kids are still hunting down and going after, even as they get older.
One thing I'm curious about, does anyone's kids actually play the Pokemon trading game?
No.
My kid was actually talking about that, right? Because he's been getting into Yu-Gi-Oh, which what's funny about it, and I guess this is a tangent, but like he specifically hasn't gotten into Magic because he knows it's expensive, and like everyone's like, don't ever get into Magic. You'll like that's a thing, right? That it's like very expensive to get
and
the
you
like
as a
good
father
decks.
just like, no, here's some heroin instead. It's cheaper for you to become a heroin addict than it would be for you to get into Magic.
But like he specifically gets into Yu-Gi-Oh because like the cards like are worthless. And so it's almost like the kids will buy Pokemon cards for the value because they like want to chase the rare cards or whatever, but like you really just have it almost like a baseball trading card. Whereas the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they like want it to actually build a decent deck, but they can build a decent deck for, you know, $20 or whatever it may be. They don't have to like go spend, you know, a gazillion dollars on it. So I don't know with that too, like if Hasbro, because was there another trading card game that they came out with recently, or am I like completely, I thought there was a
Are you talking
rumor
about
of
like
something.
Lorcana, the Disney one?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
But like, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they did do another Transformers like Wizards of the Coast game or something like that. I guess like the that one card game or whatever. Who is it that did it? Is it was it Renegade?
Oh, yeah, that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I don't know if that went anywhere.
yeah. And Chris in the chat says Yu-Gi-Oh does have a mobile game app, and that, like, again, my kid got back into Yu-Gi-Oh by playing that game with his friends online on PlayStation or whatever, and then buying more cards because they wanted the physical cards too. So I don't know if like, I guess card games have kind of figured it out, but I'm curious if like somehow, you know, some of the toy companies can figure this out.
I think the interesting thing is a parallel between the card games and Transformers and Lego is that there is a physical thing you can do with these besides just holding it in your hand and posing it. So there is another aspect to this. And I think to Aaron Archer's point,
Right.
Christian, like you said, you need to even have like another additional aspect to it beyond that. Because like the card games have the collectability, you know, the people who just like so you have the people who just want to buy them because they like Pokemon.
Right.
You have the people who are trying to find a rare card and flip it, and then you have people who are trying to play the game. So you have like three ways of interacting with that one specific card. And so maybe that is like the, you know, we kind of talk about in like the sales world, like the sticky relationship. Like if you really want to make something sticky for a younger audience, give them 3 points of interaction.
If you want to go down this road just a little bit more specifically, Archer said that it came to a head with Transformers Prime. I'm holding a Jet Viacon right now, an Air Viacon. And he said that Transformers Prime underperformed at retail in America, and that the weaponizer gimmick for all the Voyagers, those light up weapon things, were kind of just tossed in there towards the end. And kind of that was their attempt to make a thing, be an extra toy feature. But that's when they realized that, you know, just transforming and just looking like a thing was going to be enough. And then you take what Transformers Prime was in Japan, where the robot market is so much more competitive than it is here. You know, even the transforming robot market is more competitive. Bandai has transforming lines. Takara Tomy has more transforming things than just Transformers. So Prime there had to differentiate itself by being, you know, it had to have stickers like a model kit. It had to have the arms micron like a different model kit. That's a different thing to get. That's your 3 points right there, or at least 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, then the transform is the third one. That's your third way of interacting with it.
Yeah. And that's different. And I think it succeeded a little bit more there. He didn't cite any more specific numbers than that, but it seemed like Arms Micron is more successful than Prime here. Just interesting to listen to industry insiders talk about stuff like that.
Right. I feel like I need to start listening to his podcast.
Archercast is great.
Not as great as ours, but whatever. If you've got like,
It's actually called
Yeah.
The Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. But yeah,
Sounds good. I'm about to give that a listen here.
yeah,
But
they're like 2 or 3 years deep now, so definitely catch up. But it is interesting, right? Because what Legacy is not that. It has one point of interaction, maybe two, but not for kids.
right.
Because the other point of interaction for us would be, remember when that guy did that thing? Yay! I think if you wanted to do a more digital thing, you would have, not just the QR code bios, which they dropped because no one was using them apparently, but like something where you buy the toy and you scan the code or you put in the, whatever this thing is called, this code here, on a site, and you can look up the history of the Viacons. You see a compilation of their clips. Again, all this costs money, and I'm sure it's budgeted strangely, which is why they don't do it, because they want to put all the budget in the toys, and they probably should. But like, keeping a site like that up, you scan the comic series dudes, and those comics you can read for free digitally online. Something like that, something that relates to the character that you're holding in your hand, I think would be wonderful. I think it's just probably a budgetary issue.
And this is why I have been advocating, this kind of ties into my advocating for going with digital instructions. And if you go with digital instructions where you get a QR code that takes you to the site for the digital instructions, then you not only will have the digital instructions, you throw in the digital bio, and it's like, okay, here you're going to get Cybertron Hotshot. You're going to get to watch a couple clips of Cybertron Hotshot from the old Cybertron cartoon, kind of like a best of compilation thing.
Yeah, that's
another way to interact with it. And maybe you get like and then like, all right, here's where you can upload your picture of your toy and like its coolest pose. And you can see other people and their toys pose, and it's like, oh, cool. Because now you're making like a little bit more of a community.
You know what I think is interesting though is
we do know what you think is interesting, Lucas.
The morphing from, so the Generations line started out as kind of like a filler line, right? Like back with classics, 20 years ago, and it was just kind of like a tack on type of thing. But like, by no means did you think, oh, the Generations is the main, like, what you think of when you think of Transformers, right? Like, you're like, oh, it's going to be the movie figures, it's going to be the whatever, the new TV show and all that, right? Whereas I almost feel like now it's flipped, where when you think of Transformers, you think of those figures, and like like the movie line or whatever, like all the good figures are sticking into Generation Studio Series, whatever it may be, instead of the opposite way around. So then you kind of, when you do talk about that interaction and those play features, that's the thing is that it's just completely flipped with who they're targeting.
I'll go back to the discussion about retail space on the action figure aisle. And if you go back to 2023, there was far more retail space given to the Rise of the Beast toys and all the action feature toys. Now, granted, we saw that stuff clearanced out, and we saw that stuff get, a little bit of a glut. But, to go against your point, Lucas, that sort of stuff did get a lot more retail space than the collector type of things. We just weren't paying attention to it, I don't think, as much. And then you have sites like Pulse and the fan streams that cater to us as collectors, so we kind of can sit in our little bubbles sometimes. But yeah, if you went to Target, you went to Walmart especially had a lot more shelf space dedicated to the play feature Rise of the Beast figures.
Right, but then I think when you go down the toy aisle regularly, you see those Studio Series type of figures or whatever, like that's what is selling, and the one with the play features is not.
And sometimes that happens. I think sometimes that's a crapshoot. And I think the other side of this that we kind of need to remember is that the studio series, the generations, the legacies, whatever label you want to put it, the more collector focused toys, that's kind of Hasbro's Transformers evergreen side of it. Or their kind of backbone that they can always produce regardless of what media is out there. And then, like so many toy companies, there is, especially toy companies and toy brands that came about from the 80s, there is some sort of media that's going to have a tie into it that then that media comes out and suddenly you see the evergreen, the studio series, the legacy stuff, that kind of takes a sidestep to the media tie and stuff. And literally you're seeing that right now on the shelves when it comes to Transformers 1. Because if you go to a store that has Transformers 1 stuff, like all of a sudden you're seeing that blue for the Transformers 1 packaging so much more prevalently on the toy shelves. And it's a pretty stark difference compared to the black Studio Series packaging, or what we saw last year with the green Rise of the Beast packaging.
Yeah, that's a great point. To the Walmart point, I didn't even know there was another segment of Rise of the Beast stuff that had, like, I don't even know what they're called. I still don't know. But they had all the Beast characters. Like, there's a Cheetor that's about this size. It's not the mainline deluxe. It's not the Studio Series. It's some other thing. I didn't know that was a thing because I don't go to Walmarts anymore. And it wasn't marketed toward us. It didn't breach my bubble. So I saw it. I was like, what even is that? I would like another Cheetor.
Paul and Anna talked about those toys when we did our Rise of the Beast episode.
Yeah.
They went into that pretty heavily. I am a toy hunter that when I get time and opportunities to go out hunting, like I'll take, all right, what's closest to me that's going to be the quickest. And if it's a Walmart, I'll hit it up. Especially because, hey, sometimes there's Walmart exclusives I'm looking for. So yeah, I'm equal opportunity when it comes to shopping for that sort of stuff. It's frustrating at times because you would see that Cheetor on a Walmart shelf or that Nightbird on a Walmart shelf. I'm like, oh man, is this the deluxe one? And like, oh no, this is the action feature one, whatever their label for it was. So, and then even when I got some of those ones with the action feature, I've talked about it before. My son got the Optimus Primal that combines with Skullcruncher to where it makes like the armor. Skullcruncher turns into armor for Optimus Primal. Like, such a crappy toy. It's such an annoying thing that like the action feature, like it works pretty piss poorly. And so I think that's something that I get it. There's budgetary concerns you got to do with that, but if you have an action feature and it doesn't work right, that can be really, really frustrating for a. At the time, my son was like 3, and he was like, "Dude, I got frustrated as a parent because he kept giving it to me for me to fix it." And I'm like, "All right, I got the armor on. Now you just have to set it down on the kitchen table and not look at it or breathe on it, or otherwise it'll like flop back to its alligator mode, and it just looks like an alligator sitting on top of Optimus Primal's shoulders."
That's a thing. Could be a thing.
It's not, but it could be. Because then you couldn't see either the armored mode head or the Optimus Primal head.
That's just a gator.
Yeah, it's like Optimus Primal had taken a gator and just impaled the gator's abdomen with his head.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
I got the similar movie. I got the similar Bumblebee and the Black Cat. I forget what it's called. Yeah. But I wanted to get it because I have a Black Cat. It's like, it's Roxy B.
And like I know Anna liked the
Silly.
RC one because it kind of wait, was it no, it was Bumblebee that gave it like the little cat ears. Like Bumblebee had the little cat ears, but you know, I don't know if you've mucked around with it that much, but yeah, when like the tabs, maybe Skull Cruncher was worse than the others, but when you put the tabs in to like hold the armor in place, it would not stay in place very well.
Mine has stayed in place for about a year.
Well, there you go. And you're not looking at it or breathing on it, so there you go.
Nope, it's on the high shelf with the popcorn bucket.
Yeah. The popcorn truck it?
That one as well. I got the face and the truck. So it's up there with them.
Do you sometimes rip its face off?
No.
Okay. That's just for holidays.
I guess.
So I guess, was there any other points that we want to make on?
We went pretty far afield, didn't we?
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a broad topic, and this is a kind
topic.
of what is the future of the brand. And Warden was kind of giving a bit of a state of the union with this.
Right.
And so I think again there are other articles and discussions that are coming out, whether it's to talk about what Marvel Legends is doing, whether it's to talk about the retail, logistics side of it, and just kind of again talking about the health of physical toys right now to begin with.
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, do you guys think that with Warden coming on, do you think that they will try to focus more on the releases that they're doing? Or do you think that they're going to kind of do like what they're doing now, where it's, like, okay, so say when they did like Thrilling 30, for example, right? Like where they released just random stuff. And then when they did Combiner Wars, it's like, okay, this is all G1, Combiner is like certain years or whatever. Do you think that they're going to continue the like legacy trend of, kind of, releasing a random Prime figure and a random, whatever, like figure like G1 and Beast Wars and all that? Or do you think that they will try to focus on certain things at certain times?
He answered that. That was an actual question that was asked. And the question was, is the legacy style of doing what you just said, here to stay? And Warden says not necessarily. That they could take a sojourn to focus on G1 or focus on Beast Wars or focus on something else.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that next year they're focusing on the primes. That's like the main deal. Mm-hmm. But on the sidelines, we have stuff like Wasp is coming in from the animated mold. We have probably somebody else. I lost my rumor list in my head just now. Sorry, but I think we'll probably continue to see other continuities exist alongside.
See, I have a slightly, I mean, I guess to your point right at the end there, Christian, I tend to agree with. I think we have so many outlets for distribution these days that we're always going to see kind of this legacy style of spraying to as many different fields. As you go back to the idea that you said earlier of the 14-year time frame, once you get to the 14 years of a property, which we're getting pretty darn close to for Transformers Prime, you're going to see some toys coming out to homage that. We saw that recently with Transformers Animated. And so if they are on a big like kick of, talking about the primes, not Transformers Prime, but the primes as being these God, pantheon of gods entity sort of thing in the Transformers lore, you still have like, all right, here's going to be the Amazon exclusive wave. And there you're going to get a whole subset of different stuff. Or here's going to be the Generations releases. Not Generations. What did they call it when they would do the like brown box? Selects, yes. Here's going to be the Selects release that's going to tie in more to a repaint and remold of a guy that is a Transformers Cybertron. Like we're going to get who's the Pteranodon from Transformers Cybertron. We're gonna get him heavily remolded out of Swoop. I don't know. Brimstone, was that his name?
Brimstone. Yeah.
Brimstone out of Swoop. Not saying that that's gonna happen, but I think because you have so many different starting points for Transformers fans at this stage in the fandom, you can't alienate any of those at any specific point in time. You have to always engage all of those different fan bases while trying to bring on new fans. And it's a tough tightrope to walk. What's that?
Bots will rise again.
I mean, you just got to wait. What is it? Another 12 more years?
Yep.
So, I think you have to kind of cater to that. And I think that is one of the things that Legacy was intentionally trying to do, is cater towards the animated crowd, can't cater towards the Unicron trilogy crowd, can't cater towards the G1 crowd. Like we talked about that was like a wave, like, oh, there's no G1 toys in this whatsoever. Like there's still an Optimus and still a Bumblebee. It's just the animated styling. So, the G1ers like myself are still probably going to get those, but the folks who prefer animated are okay. You're scratching kind of two witches with one toy.
One thing I did think was interesting when they discussed it in the interview was focus on character accuracy to the shows. So, I mean, I feel like they kind of acknowledge that, like some of the Prime characters, for example, like were not, as popular as they could be because they kind of G1ified the Prime characters. And, because I think they were mentioning, like, they're asking about animated, and they're asking about, like, releasing some of the characters that never originally got released. And, just kind of, it sounds like one that Warden was not a huge animated fan, like that, just not his focus. But that he was just kind of talking about the challenge of making things screen accurate too. So it sounds like that they're probably gonna make a bigger focus on that and not kind of do what they've been doing.
I mean, even as accurate as some of the Transformer Prime toys were, there's still a few of those characters that didn't quite come out like the way they did in the show.
Right.
Yeah, you can tell that they made an adjustment sort of halfway through those guys. You start out with Bulkhead and RC, and they're very G1ified. And then Knockout comes a little bit later, and it's a little bit closer, maybe just a little. And then by the time you get Dreadwing and Skyquake, it's like, okay, these guys look way more like Prime. And still fitting in with the Legacy aesthetic, but less of a departure from what they looked like.
Right.
Well, and then too, once you got to animated Prime and animated Bumblebee, look how much more they look like the Prime cartoon versus Prowl.
Right.
And much shorter time frame between Prowl and Prime and Bumblebee. Now, I mean that doesn't mean much because things are designed sometimes way earlier than they're released as toys. But yeah, Prowl was G1ified significantly, and I like that take. But
like that take
Bumblebee and Optimus were not.
I like those takes less.
You like which takes less?
I prefer Prowl to Prime and B.
I don't know.
What about
I really
wait,
Prime
what?
and B.
Oh, so animated Prime and animated B from Legacy, you're not as big a fan of as you are to animated Prowl from Legacy.
Correct.
Okay, that's fair. I think you're wrong, but that's fair.
I mean, I think animated is so distinctive that you either do it all the way or you don't do it. And they kind of went 50% of the way there, whereas with Prowl, they didn't. They just this is animated Prowl, but he is in G1 now. That makes sense to me. And then with Prime especially, I think they're like, okay, here's 60% of the way to animated Prime. It's like, I've got animated Prime. He's great.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
a weird.
that's the other.
It's the same weird mix of the first Prime guys for me.
Right, right. I mean, I think that the other challenge, obviously, that we talked about before is that the technology by the time Prime and animated was released originally was so much better than like what G1 was. So like in G1, even if it wasn't 100% accurate, you're like, oh my god, this is the most accurate it's ever been. Whereas, in some of these figures, you're like comparing to the original toy, and in some cases, the original toy is a better toy. Um, so,
Yep.
yeah.
That's because I was there, right? It was,
Right.
years ago. How many years ago is that? 16 years ago? Yeah. There are definitely Transformers fans alive now that were not alive for animated and did not have those toys, and those toys are valuable in the secondary market now. So it's tough.
Right,
Yeah, and I
right.
think for you youngins out there listening to this, think about what Luca just said. We went for what was the best we had. What that means is for decades, the most screen accurate Bumblebee toy is Action Master Bumblebee. Think about that. Action Master Bumblebee, if you wanted the most screen accurate Bumblebee toy in existence, you had to own a non-transforming helicopter pack little doofus. And now look how spoiled you are.
Mm-hmm.
People make me sick.
No, it is interesting though, because, well, I'll save that point for later. Never mind.
Let the hate flow through you.
No, it's not a hate thing. It's something that I have with my collection, that it's so vast now and so much of it is in storage. And I don't display any of the old stuff because the new stuff is what I've wanted this whole time. But why do I still have the old stuff? Because I was there. I was there collecting it because it was the best we had at the time. And now it's just here. So that's
I think that's a big reason why people are parting ways with chunks of their collection. It's like, why did I own Generation Scourge? Well, Generation Scourge was the best screen accurate Scourge I had at the time. Yeah. And then we got Titans Return Scourge. Ooh, now this is the most screen accurate one. And then we got Studio Series Scourge. Now here we go. So do I need the other
3 Scourges
still? No. And that's a weird thing, because sometimes like I'll like a mold. Like I do enjoy that big B-52 bomber that is, Generation Scourge, that is his alt mode.
Yep.
It's like, okay, is there another way I can own this toy? And that kind of comes back to the idea of the Serpentor toy, because it is that vehicle. So it's like, oh, I can own this now and still have it, because I've been trying to sell the Rat Bat that shares that mold, because I have the third-party Rat Bat that does a better job of being Senator Rat Bat.
Or you have the Amazon one from last year. Same objective.
Or the Amazon one. That is another Scourge repaint. So it is sort of like
we'll probably need to save this thing for a different show. Because what were we there for, and why is it still here? That sort of stuff. But like, we'll talk about that later. But in the chat, let us know what you want to talk about, because I think a lot of you chat goers have been around as long as we have.
Right.
And if you're not, you're filthy casuals. And please like us. Please subscribe. Please share.
Welcome to the party.
Friends. Welcome to the party. Add your comments. If you don't like what I've said, please mention in the comments. Please feel free to flame me up in the comments. I'll fight you back.
And subscribe, right?
Yes, but like and subscribe. Again, we don't care if you're following us because you hate us, or you follow us because you like us. Just follow us.
Although, to be fair, I mean, I feel like it's a gauntlet that if you've managed to make it this far into the episode, you probably have already subscribed.
Spite watching is a thing, Lucas. Don't knock spite watching.
So, again, mentioning book club this week at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central on the TF Talk Discord on Sunday night, that they're going to be discussing Transformers 43.
Wars End and the fate of Cybertron.
Zaldron also says, by the way, the chat goers have actually been around longer than you, Christian. So,
I mean, maybe living longer than I have, in it longer than I have, I would object to that.
Depends on the person.
Depends on the person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, anywho. All right. Well, with that, I thank you guys for joining me tonight. I thank everyone in the chat for their participation. And we will see everyone next week.